I'd like to welcome everybody to Keystroke Live. Today we're doing security levels, just a little general information as we get going. And what I'm going to do is, if I can find it again, there we go. I'm going to mute everybody while I'm doing the presentation. And then at the end, I'll open it up for questions. So that way, nobody will have to worry about background noise. We're talking about security levels today. I'd like to welcome everybody to Keystroke Live. Today and every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, we have Keystroke Live. We have topical training information on Keystroke software. Generally, the first Wednesday of each month is Michael Gebb, but next week, since it is the RESPA Retail Now show, we will not have a Keystroke Live. A lot of people are going to be at that show, so we'll miss everybody next week, but someone will see you here 2 weeks from now. Okay, security levels gives you a lot of control of what your various employees can or cannot do in Keystroke. Some of the basics. A security level of 0 allows someone the most access. So that's for owners, managers, those types of people. And it can go all the way down to a level 10, which is the least access, the least they can do in the program. So it's important to remember that. It is not recommended to give anyone a negative security level. Keystroke, and you'll see this in a little bit, Keystroke assigns negative security levels to certain functions to not allow access for anything. If you do need a negative security level, change your 0 security level to negative, do what you need to do, and change it back. It's just really not recommended on a regular basis. And even so, as a manager or an owner, you might want 2 different clerk accesses to the program, one for your managerial functions with a security level 0, and then maybe another one with a different security level for just day-to-day type things that you're doing in the program. Always recommend when you're first getting started, run a security levels report, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. It'll give you an overall view of the current settings, and it kind of helps you understand what certain clerk security levels can do and what they can't do. Most of the security levels are saved in a file in your data folder called levels.dat. But there are some exceptions. Sales transaction types have their own security levels. There is a default for all transaction types, and then each transaction type can have different security levels for different functions. So you may not want your frontline sales clerks to have access to things like sales orders or quotes. Maybe just your salespeople or assistant managers or managers do that. Sales payment types also have security levels. So you can restrict access to things like the AR adjustments payment type, something like that. Gift card triggers, if you're using gift cards, have their own security levels. Print buttons can have security levels, so they can only be seen by certain people. And also, most of the databases, especially customers, vendors, and inventory, you can have security levels on individual records. Now, one thing that's strongly related to security is PCI. It's the buzz these days. Everybody knows that things are going to be changing. And we're Everybody in the industry is working really hard to try to get this to happen. But the things to remember in Keystroke, you need to have complex passwords for PCI security, and that a complex password is at least 7 characters with 1 letter and 1 number. And what determines who needs complex passwords are based on these 5 security levels. There's 3 general security levels: changing parameters, editing security levels, or file maintenance. CM stands for Configuration Manager. And also if someone can add or edit clerks. And I've given you the default security levels here. Let's take a look at Keystroke now and see where a lot of these security levels are. Let's go to Configuration Manager. Under the Tables menu, you see security levels, broken them out in a lot of different functions. And when you look at each section, you can see all these different functions. They're generally in alphabetical order. And you can see what security level, at least by default, this is our default security levels, what level a person needs to have in order to be able to access this function. So for example, to open the drawer without a paid out or something like that, they're required to have a 5 security level. Of course, you can change that. To change any of your security levels, just hit enter on it, and we could change that to 4 if we'd like, and save it. As you can see, we have security levels for modules to access the various modules, security levels to add and edit database information for all of our different databases, clerks, contacts, customers, etc. Sales manager security levels, what they can do, whether they can sell items below certain prices, whether they can use the returns function, just all kinds of stuff. Sales transactions. Now this you can access 2 different places. If you access it under the Tables menu in Sales Transactions, you're going to see defaults. This is what every sales transaction type is going to use for security levels unless you set it differently. So for example, if you want to restrict sales orders, if you look at sales orders, you're going to see 2 columns over here. This last column with the parentheses is what the default security level is set for. But if you want something different for a sales order, you can, for example, create a new transaction. The default for all transaction types is 10. Well, maybe you only want someone with a 3 security level to be able to enter a sales order. If you change that, now you'll see instead of what we call the null symbol in the second to the last column, you're going to see the security level specific for sales order. And you can have access to every transaction type. When you look at your transaction types here as a reminder, the ones with the little asterisk here in the column after the letter, that tells you the transaction types that are enabled. Also, you have Purchase Manager, Accounts Receivable functions. Notice, someone has to have a pretty high security or good access security level. Now remember, when it says a 5 here, that means a clerk needs to have a security level of 5432110. If they're a 6, they can't access it. If they're a 5, they can. And then there's closeouts. So that's where you can take a look at most of the general security levels. But as I mentioned, there are security levels all over the place on your various sales payment types. Let's take a look, for example, on Visa, Mastercard, or Discover. Every payment type has a security levels down at the bottom here to add a new payment of this type, edit a payment, display reference characters. That's important with Visa, Mastercard, or Discover, credit cards, that sort of thing. If you routinely take phone orders, you might want to change this security level on the display reference characters when you're adding a new payment. That allows you to see what you're typing in. If you have fat fingers like I do, it's always a good idea to see that to make sure that what you think you're typing is what you're actually typing. Another thing that's important, especially on process payments, you probably want a 2, sometimes maybe even a -1. You may not ever want anybody to enter something in a blank auth code field. The reason for that is, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this, a clerk sees that auth code field, they think that's where the CVV number goes. What happens, a lot of you probably know this, the payment gets saved in Keystroke, but it never goes out to the processor. So on process payments, make sure you restrict access to that field. You don't want somebody accidentally typing something in there. So every payment type has security levels. Gift card triggers have security levels. So there's a security level down at the bottom on each of the gift card triggers. So for example, if you only want managers to reload or return to a gift card, you could change that security level to something a little more restrictive so that only managers can use that function. Print buttons, they have security levels too. This will determine who can see what print buttons and use them. And then on various database records, especially inventory, customers, vendors, that sort of thing, on inventory, on the more data screen, there's security levels right down here. Whether a clerk can view, sell, or purchase certain items. Now remember, this is per record. You want to be pretty careful with this, but it does allow you very capable, very flexible security settings for all of your databases. We have a similar thing on customers. Security level to view this customer or to sell to this customer. Maybe you have certain high-profile customers that you only want managers to work with. You can restrict access to selling to a certain customer. You can see here. For customer number 4, you have to be a 0 security level. Very similarly with vendors, there's security levels here. Let's take a look at the report I mentioned at the beginning. This is in Report Manager. You can see this down on the status bar under the Tables menu and Security Levels. As the default settings are pretty good, we're just going to run this. And you can see all of your security levels. This is a great piece of paper to sit down and kind of plan what you want to do. And you can see down when you're looking at your sales transaction types. It's going to put the default security level on the report unless it's different than the default. Remember, we changed the sales order, create a new transaction. So it's going to define the differences for your various security levels. Now, unfortunately, there isn't a report for the things that we talked about, like your sales payment type security levels or your inventory security levels. You could create reports for your databases, a special report form to see those security levels. Whoop. Let's get the right screen here. And I kind of want to review this a little bit. Remember, it's always important. 0 security level gives you the most access to everything in Keystroke. A 10 gives you the least access. Don't recommend negative security levels, but there are times for it. So if you have any questions on that, give us a call. Also, the other thing is the help files are really good at defining what a lot of these security levels are. If you're not sure, take a look at the help files. And most of these are saved in levels.dat, except for your transaction type, sales payments. They're all in their own individual files. Also remember, these 5 security levels determine whether or not a clerk is going to require a complex password. I'd like to open this up for questions for anybody that has anything that they'd like to know about security levels. Is anybody out there?
We're here. I think they're still awake.
Yeah, I'm awake. Yep.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. This has been all about security levels. As always, give us a call if you have any questions.